Chapter 1. Booth in the Desert. Somewhere deep in the Arizona desert, where the hot asphalt of Route 66 is lost in the endless haze of the horizon, stands a lonely phone booth. It is as if forgotten by time. It's rusty, with peeling paint and cracked glass, through which only the empty, dusty interior is visible. The wire that once connected it to the outside world has long since been severed and dangles in the wind like a snake's tail. The booth has been there for over half a century. No one remembers who put it up or why. There are no towns or even roadside cafes for miles around, only scorched earth, sparse cacti, and an endless highway stretching away. However, locals from nearby communities say that if you approach the booth deep in the night, when the moon hangs low and the wind howls between the rocks, sometimes the phone rings. The sound of the bell is sharp, piercing, as if coming not from the past, but from some other place. Those who have heard it say that the sound penetrates right into the bones, making the heart beat frantically. However, the strangest thing is that no one can see a wire that could carry the signal. Some brave men came closer. Some even dared to pick up the phone. Most of them then disappeared. Chapter 2. The Night Ride. The summer of 2022 was unbearably hot, even for Arizona. The air shook over the asphalt, turning the horizon into a rippling haze. It was then that a young couple, Jake and Laura, took a trip down the legendary Route 66 in an old 1968 Ford Mustang. The car was Jake's dream, dark blue, with an engine roar that sounded like the voice of the road itself. They drove without a map, relying only on intuition and the occasional signpost. Night caught them in a particularly desolate stretch of road. No lights, no gas stations, only stars, cold and indifferent as the eyes of a dead man. "Look!" Laura suddenly exclaimed, pointing ahead. Jake slowed down. A silhouette loomed in the headlights, the same abandoned phone booth. It stood a few feet from the road, as if someone had put it there on purpose to keep travelers from passing it. "Oh shit," Jake muttered. It was the same booth the guy at the gas station had told me about. Laura laughed, but her laugh was nervous. "You don't believe those stories, do you? They say the phone rings sometimes." "Nonsense," Jake snorted, but there was tension in his voice. "It's probably just the wind stirring something inside. Why don't we check it out?" Laura grinned, but there was a challenge in her eyes. Jake hesitated. The wind was howling harder, and the shadows around the booth seemed too thick, like something was hiding in them. "Okay," he said at last. Chapter 3. Call from the Void. The sand crunched beneath their feet, like bones ground by time. The wind, cold and harsh, was like the breath of the desert itself. It moved the sand waves, making them flow from place to place like invisible creatures crawling beneath their feet. Laura paused for a moment, feeling goosebumps run up her spine. The moon hung low, huge and dead pale, casting a ghostly light over the place. It was shining down on the rusty booth, turning it into a kind of stage, as if someone or something was preparing for a play, and they, Jake and Laura, were unwilling spectators. And at that moment, ding, ding, ding. Laura flinched as if she'd been electrocuted. The sound was sharp, metallic, unnaturally loud in this dead silence. "Did you hear it?" she whispered, not taking her eyes off the booth. Jake tensed, his fingers clenched involuntarily into fists. "It can't be," he mumbled. Ding, ding, ding. The phone rang again, clear, insistent, real. "It must be a glitch," Jake laughed nervously, but his laugh was as dry as the crackle of a parched branch. "Maybe a wire's shorting out somewhere." Ding, ding, ding. Laura kept her eyes on the telephone receiver hanging inside the booth. Black, shabby, and covered with a layer of dust, it seemed like an ancient artifact, best left untouched. However, the ringing didn't stop. It sounded louder and louder, more insistent, as if someone was demanding that they answer it. "That's impossible," Jake whispered. "There's no wire, There's no line. Laura stepped forward slowly. Laura, no. Jake held out his hand to stop her, but she was already inside the booth. The smell of mold and oxidized metal hit her nose. The air inside was stale, as if the booth hadn't been opened in decades. The phone was still in its place, but now it vibrated in time with the ringing, as if it were alive. Zing, zing, zing. Laura slowly reached out her hand. Her fingers trembled. Don't, Jake said again, but his voice sounded less confident. She picked up the phone. The cold plastic stuck to her palm, as if covered in a thin layer of slime. Hello? She whispered. Silence at first, deaf, bottomless, as if the universe was gaping at the other end of the wire. Then a breath, slow, deaf, inhuman. Laura felt her heart freeze. Who is it? Her voice trembled. A pause, then a whisper, a hoarse voice made up of many other voices blending into one. You're already here. Laura gasped and hung up the phone. She took a step backward, hitting her back against the stall wall. In the same instant, bang! The Mustang's headlights went out. Darkness covered them, thick and absolute. Jake! Laura shrieked, running out of the booth. He was already there, grabbing her arm. Let's get to the car. Before they could take a step, however, a new sound came from the darkness. Shh, shh, shh. The radio in the Mustang had turned itself on, and from the speakers, through the interference, came the same voice. You're already here. Jake pulled Laura behind him. They ran across the sand, stumbling, panting, not looking back. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, the phone booth rang again. Chapter 4. Running Nowhere. Their hearts pounded in unison as Jake and Laura flew into the passenger compartment of their Mustang in a panic. The door slammed shut with a metallic clang, too loud in the dead silence of the desert. With trembling fingers, Jake turned the ignition key. The engine rumbled with relief, as if the metal beast itself were in a hurry to leave this cursed place. Drive! Hurry up! In the rearview mirror, Laura saw the phone booth. It was slowly disappearing into the night, but its silhouette remained in front of her eyes for a long time, like a burned spot on her retinas. The highway raced toward her under her wheels, the white markings flickering hypnotically. Laura suddenly realized that she was still clutching the telephone receiver in her sweaty palm. When had she taken it with her? She threw the artifact into the corner of the cabin in disgust, where it bounced with an ominous plastic crackle. Chapter 5. Oasis with a Taste of Death. After an hour of frantic racing, the lights of the roadside Oasis gas station loomed in the distance. An ordinary roadside complex with a faded sign, but right now it seemed like the most desirable place on earth. Jake stopped the car at the pump. He noticed that gas station number 3 was flickering. One of the bulbs in the light fixture was blinking at irregular intervals. It was like it was sending them a message in Morse code. Inside the store smelled of fried pies and old coffee. Behind the cash register sat a man in his 60s with a face riddled with deep wrinkles, each one seeming to hold its own horror story. Gas? The cashier didn't even look up from his shabby Stephen King book. Laura couldn't take it anymore. We saw that phone booth on Route 66. It was ringing. The book fell to the floor with a clatter. The old man looked up at them, and for the first time Jake saw real, primal horror. The cashier's face turned ashy grey, his lips quivered. You are 3rd this month. His voice turned to a whisper. His fingers clutched the edge of the counter frantically, knuckles turning white. Chapter 6. A Truth Worse Than a Lie. What? Jake felt an icy stream of sweat run down his back. The cashier slowly licked his parched lips. Those who answer the phone, they're found later, in cars, dead. He made a theatrical pause that hid the horror behind it, without a trace of violence. Laura grabbed the counter to keep from falling. The air in the room was suddenly thick as syrup. You're kidding, Jake protested weakly, but his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. The old man shook his head, and at that moment the light in the store flickered briefly. In the darkness, Jake saw something impossible. The cashier's shadow on the wall didn't move, though he was clearly moving. "The last ones were found yesterday," the old man continued, as if not noticing the anomaly. 1973 Cadillac, doors locked from the inside, the faces, smiles. He swallowed the lump in his throat, and the radio was playing an old song, "I'm your puppet," only the words were different. "I'm your vessel." Chapter 7. Disappearance. When they ran out of the store, the night had gotten even darker. The Mustang was still standing there, but something about it had changed. The windows seemed darker than they were and reflected the stars. Jake turned sharply to Laura. "We're going to Phoenix. Now forget this nonsense." As they approached the car, the radio suddenly turned itself on. The words came out of the speaker in the same whisper. However, now it sounded louder, clearer, and the voice said the words, "They're already here." The keys fell out of Jake's hands. At that moment, Laura shrieked. In the rearview mirror, she saw... No, it would have been better if she hadn't seen anything. Epilogue. The find. The Mustang was found 3 days later, 5 miles from a gas station. The car stood in the middle of the highway with an empty tank, though the calculations said it should have had enough gas to get to Phoenix. The keys were sticking out of the ignition. On the passenger seat was a telephone receiver, the one from the booth. However, the weird thing is, the radio worked, at full volume. And although the speakers were clearly picking up the same whisper, "They're here now," a closer look revealed that the device was not connected to the power supply. Since then, the phone in the abandoned booth has been ringing more often, especially on moonless nights. Sometimes it's picked up, sometimes it's even answered. And more abandoned cars appear on Route 66, with smiling corpses inside and a working radio.